Hey guys, welcome to reading. So we are going to start a new story today called Corpse of Corpse. This might sound familiar to you because we talked about this last Thursday, right? Yeah, when we read today's Swordsman. So it is going to be about fencing again, and it will actually tell a fictional story about a boy who competes in a fencing competition. So we are going to be reading the first part of it, pages 353 to 359, and completing a short workbook page exercise, page 139, about setting and finding text evidence to support our answers. So when we're finding text evidence, it's useful to have a list of sentence starters, to basically prove that our answer is correct. For example, if we say the setting of the story is at a park, how do we know this? Because on page 25, it said that John and Mary had a picnic at the park, right? So we kind of practiced this in previous units, so we're going to refresh our memory and practice this more. So let's go ahead and read first. If you would like, you can read alone. That's totally fine. Otherwise, we'll read together, and as always, I'll stop in the middle to go over some comprehension questions. I think it will also be helpful to kind of keep a list of questions that we're supposed to find the answers to before we start reading. So this is a good technique when you're doing homework and assignments, so you are actively reading. So this is page 139, the workbook page we're supposed to do. Let's look at what we need to look for. So I'll write down some of the questions on this post-it note. Circle the letter of each picture that could match the setting described in the story. The fencing gym and the living room of Patrick's house. Okay, so we know that while we read, we need to search for setting. Setting of the fencing gym and the setting of the what? Patrick's living room. Yep. So we can't just like find the setting. We have to also know what it looks like. And how do we know what it looks like? By looking at details that the author gives. So it says, what evidence or details from the story support your choice? So again, finding text evidence. So these are some phrases we can start with. We need to look for details. Okay, what else? Answer the questions. Did Patrick have any brothers or sister? So we need to find that. Were there girls in Patrick's fencing class? We need to pay attention to that. Did Patrick live in the middle of the country, far from other people, or did he live close to the city? So we need to find that. And did Patrick have his fencing class in the morning, afternoon, or evening? So we can just write, we're just writing little notes. Okay, so now we know that as we read, we have stuff to look for. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Blade to blade. 6, 4, 6, 4, 6. We thrust our foils. These are the foils. We thrust our foils back and forth, repeating the parries at Mr. LeBlanc's commands. Aha! Sloppy defense. Rest. Perspiring or sweating, we dropped our arms and stood up straight while he corrected Robert. The power is here, he exclaimed, straightening Robert's gloved wrist. Don't bend it so, he clapped his hands. Come, come. We all lined up before him like soldiers. Ah, Jack, you will preside. My 4 judges will be Bruce, Rick, Harry, Sid. Ah, now let me see. He deliberately ran his eyes up and down the line of us. You, Patrick. He pointed at me and then at Robert. And you, Robert. Inside, I groaned. Robert? Yeah, he held his wrist wrong, but that didn't matter. He outweighed me by at least 30 pounds. I had never beaten him. Nobody had ever beaten him. He took his position. The light fencing foil pointed down to the ground as he prepared for the salute. Let's pause here for a second and look at the people in Patrick's class. So Mr. LeBlanc is a teacher. We got Robert, Jack, Bruce, Rick, Harry said these are all boy names. So far, there are no girls in fencing class. Okay. Do we know yet if it's morning, afternoon, or evening? What do you think? Too soon to tell. Let's keep reading. He took his position, the light fencing foil pointed down to the ground as he prepared for the salute. I took my position. We saluted smartly. Yes, that one dramatic part of the game, the snapping of the foil straight up and then snapping it back down. He had mastered that. We slipped our masks on. Are you ready? Jack asked him. Robert grunted. I sensed his excitement. Another victory for him. Are you ready? Jack asked me. Yes, I replied. Commence! Start. I sprang from my place with a leap. He hesitated. I feinted to his outside, slipped to the point under his blade, and neatly scored against him, tapping him in the chest. All 4 judges agreed to the score, and Jack nodded. For once, I was winning, but I knew it wouldn't last long. He slapped his foil against mine, beating the blade. The blow knocked my foil aside. Effortlessly, he pressed his blade against my foil and slid it straight across until the red protective button nipped me in the chest. The judges called it. Beating and pressing the blade were Robert's techniques. He could overpower anybody in the class. He quickly scored on me 3 more times. It went on until my right hand could barely grip the hilt. He made me retreat, and I gave ground as far as I could, even beyond the white warning line on the fencing strip. Once, when he executed a straight lunge, I ducked low, bending at the waist and dropping my back leg as though in a split. The point went over my head. As he retreated, I went back, trying to pull out of too deep a stance. I pushed myself forward and caught him again, square in the chest. But the judges argued over my move. In fencing, a man must have the right of attack. They were accustomed to somebody's parrying a thrust or blocking a thrust before counterattacking. They argued about my ducking, for they had never seen anybody avoid a hit in that way. I knew that behind his mask Robert was sneering, for he already had 4 points on me, and the match was nearly over. So, boys and girls, who's winning so far? Robert's winning so far. Let's see if that changes. For once, Mr. LeBlanc interfered with the boys in a class match. The technique was masterful. Award the point, Jack. Yes, sir. The time is up, he said. I want to get another match in. Grateful to my teacher, I slipped the mask off and went up to shake hands with Robert. He gripped my hand and ground my knuckles together. I gasped and winced. Masterful, he exclaimed sarcastically and strode away. Holding my left hand in my right, I walked off the strip. Ah, masterful, Mr. LeBlanc exclaimed much later to my parents. Mom smiled and Dad glanced over at me. Next month is your first tournament, Patrick, Mom said. Mr. LeBlanc rubbed his hands together. What a day that will be. There will be spectators there from the Olympic Committee. He stopped short. Oh, pardon me, Julio, he said to my father. Dad waved it away. He glanced down at his bad leg, a little wistfully, but without pain in his eyes. Once it hurt to think of it, but not anymore. He glanced at me fondly. Now with Patrick here. Come here, son. I came and sat on the arm of his chair. Before my birth, my father had been diagnosed with bone cancer, and the doctors had amputated or cut off his right leg just above the knee. No longer could he fence back and forth on the strip, high on the balls of his feet, ready to leap or lunge. In his prime, he had been an Olympic contender. But now he was just my father. Dad instead of Papa, for he and my mother wanted me to grow up thoroughly American. Okay, so let's unpack a couple things here. So, why does Mr. LeBlanc say pardon me, Julio, to Patrick's dad? Yeah, so it's because his dad used to be an Olympic contender for fencing, which means he was training to be in the Olympics, but he unfortunately got cancer and he had to get his right leg amputated so he can no longer, do fencing. So Mr. LeBlanc bringing up the Olympic Committee might have been hurtful to Patrick's father, but that is the reason he says, pardon me. Okay. I had seen film clips of him, and ever since I had been able to walk, he had shown me his foils and equipment. And ever since I had been able to walk, fencing I had always thought was the finest sport in the world. Mr. LeBlanc, do you think I can win next month? I asked. Of course I do. But Robert, LeBlanc threw his hands into the air. He has strength, but no style. Look what you did to him tonight. I lost to him tonight. Yes, but the way you scored, he turned to my parents. The big boy comes in, so he imitated Robert's powerful lunge. What does the little one do? He imitated the way I had ducked. To my surprise, it did look graceful. Mom and Dad looked pleased. And then he comes up and thrusts the boy right in the chest. Mr. LeBlanc demonstrated the lunge, a little bit of sweat gleaming in his silver hair. Where have I seen such technique? He asked, smiling at my father. He had been my father's coach. Where indeed? Dad asked, laughing. Mr. LeBlanc stood up to leave. Dad gripped his crutch and stood up, shaking hands with him. Good night, LeBlanc. Thank you. Good night, Julio, and you, Marie. Good night, Patrick. Good night, sir. Thank you. That night I lay awake in bed, watching the triangles of light from the highway play across the ceiling of my narrow room. Our house bordered the highway, but the traffic had become my lullaby. I went to sleep thinking of the tournament, of Robert, of Mr. LeBlanc. Masterful, they had said, but what was it to be a master? What good are thinking and practice and style if, with one strong blow from his blade, Robert could sweep away my defense? Pausing here, so what is Patrick worried about while he's sleeping? Why is he so worried about the fencing match? Yeah, he's worried that Robert's strength will serve as a disadvantage to Patrick, right? He's worried that his strength, Robert will beat him basically because he's stronger than he is and he's bigger than he is. Let's kind of check in on our questions to see if we found any answers. So, does Patrick have brothers or sisters? No, at least not yet. Are there any girls in his class? Nope. Does he live in the city or country? We're not sure yet. Does he have class in the morning, afternoon, or evening? Let's keep waiting for that as well. We have a little bit of hints as well. At breakfast, I was still sleepy. Patrick, you're dragging. Your mind is on the tournament, eh? Dad asked, smiling. For the first time, I noticed how his eyes crimpled up when he smiled. But for now, you have to eat and think about schoolwork, right? He rubbed his big, rough hand over my hair. I tried to smile. I must go, he said. The guys will be here soon. He drained his coffee, pulled himself up, and stumped away to get his briefcase. During the mornings, my father worked as a law clerk. In the afternoons and evenings, he went to law school. He would not be dependent, he said. Ever since I could remember, Dad had been in school. But soon I knew he would be taking his bar examinations. We must go too, Mom said. Finish, Patrick. Will you do the dishes this afternoon? Yes. Mrs. Strand will drop in after school to check on you and put the roast in. We hurriedly cleared up breakfast in the cramped kitchen and then left for school. Boys and girls, we will continue in part 2 of the video. See you in about 5 seconds. Bye!